One of my most favourite things to do is to discover a retro game that I've never heard of or played before, which is why I have recently delved into the Japanese Sega Saturn market, though a lot of these games have questionable ethics towards young girls. Anyway, I was trying to remember the name of a game that I had seen a screenshot of that I could have sworn was called Armada, but upon googling found it to be the confusingly titled Granada. Confusing not only because over here in the UK it makes me think of ITV, but because of the logo, which appears to have prefixed and suffixed an X around the title, making it an awkward thing to search for. Either way, I'm convinced it's simply called Granada and not Granada X or X Granada X or X Granada, which the opening titles will tell us is a hypercannon tank, country of origin unknown. If we continue reading the opening text crawl, it gets a tad more bonkers, saying that this weapon has been destroying all kinds of other weapons, one after the other, regardless of attached camps north or south. It is also referred to as God of the African Continent. I'm not really sure what to make of this. For one, the image in the background is of our main tank. Are we the God of the African Continent? Clicking to start a new game will waste no time throwing you straight into the first level, with only 2 or 3 seconds to get your bearings before enemies come rolling in. This is a top-down map-based action game, with a first impression would draw comparison with the top-down levels from Thunder Force 2. You control our super tank, which will always stay central to the screen as you traverse around each level. You have 8 different directions to move in and a standard and super attack. The standard attack is a constant flurry of firepower, whilst the super attack fires out a much harder hitting slow blast. There is no ammo limit in the game, so you are free to throw out punishment at your heart's content, and you have a generous shield bar. Each level in the game will outfit you with a map in the lower right corner. This will become your main focus, as in order to progress to the boss battle, you must first destroy all of the red targets, the remaining number of which can be found in the top right corner. It's a fairly simple concept. You're a tank, tanks like to blow things up, and you need to blow up all of the things on screen. Where the game varies a little bit is with its controls and level layout. You will find out pretty early on that your tank does not move like you would expect. Rather than snapping to the direction that you're pressing, you step through the directions, making your character turn properly. This means that if you want to perform a 90-degree turn, your tank will have to arc, not allowing for quick snapshots to fast approaching enemies. This is quite frustrating until you start to employ the strafe mechanic. Holding B will lock our tank and allow us to move freely whilst our shooting direction is not affected. It is imperative to adopt this into your playtime, as this is not an easy game by any means, and without it you will probably start pulling your hair out around about the second level. Enemies, as expected, resemble different variations of weapon mounted machinery, and these generally come in small cannon fodder size and bigger and beefier size. There are also static structures for you to blow up, and these range from enemy deploying depots to defense turrets. To help you on your quest to destroy everything that moves, you'll find a selection of power-ups in each level. These vary depending on the stage, but are generally quite useful, if not a bit of an uninspired design. The first pickups you will get will be these spinning little squares. They do their best to follow you around the map, sometimes cheating and clipping through the walls when they have had enough, but I had a hard time figuring out exactly what they did. I think they do stop incoming enemy attacks, but their primary use seems to be from them randomly launching into enemies and acting as a bullet ricochet should you shoot them. These did come in handy, especially in bottleneck areas, but I never really felt like I was in control of what they were actually doing. The second add-on you will find is this unpainted Captain America shield that magnets to the top of your tank. This one I found to be much more useful, as you can launch it forward and let out a spray of bullets, which indeed came in handy for the boss of the level. The main variety in the game probably comes from the stage locations and changes in enemy types. The first few levels will have you fighting through an industrial setting, flying through the sky on the back of a giant attack plane to a cyber city resembling a dungeon from Phantasy Star 2. These are all really fun to play, and the music, which is a little bit lacking in the first 2 levels, starts to get much better, giving the game a bit more unique identity. And then we hit level 4, which I'll be honest, I hate this level. It's an uninspired sand planet with a confusing layout and annoying enemies. The map does show you where you need to be heading to defeat your targets, but due to the stage comprising of 2 separate elevation levels, it isn't really useful to let you know where you have to go. I got lost here for quite a while, and this was only made more frustrating by the odd shifts in enemies. Previously we were fighting robots and tanks, which seemed fit into the game's theme, but now we have these scurrying little things which, I'll be honest, I couldn't really tell whether they were meant to be giant bugs or machines. and they blend way too much into the canvas. We also have the most stupid of all enemies, boulders with a mind of their own. After driving around aimlessly for a while, I did manage to make my way to the boss, where I exploded for no reason. This was the first time that I realised each level has a time limit, and that I had simply taken way too much time. Anyway, you can't judge an entire game on just one level, and most games have at least one level that you're not a fan of, and making it to level 5, we appear to be back on form. This is about where I died on my first run. I had burnt through quite a lot of lives getting the hang of the controls and the map layouts, so I didn't expect to succeed on my first try. But my second go round, however, was far more prosperous. The learning curve isn't steep, and you'll have a massively improved skill set even after playing for just a few minutes. I flew for the first stage virtually unscathed, didn't have too much trouble with level 4, and got back to where I was. This time I made it to the boss, not before running out of time again however, though this was actually timed pretty well as I was one hit away from death anyway, and I made it to stage 6 with 4 lives intact. Stage 6 was a breeze, and I thought I was on the homeward stretch until stage 7 completely decimated me. Not to give the whole game away, but there are 9 levels in total, and the difficulty curve of the last 3 is quite jarring. This is mainly down to cheap enemies who, if you don't spot straight away, will just be on you and drain your life quicker than you can shout out your favourite expletive. This is where Granada stopped being fun for me and started becoming more stressful. This isn't helped by the fact that you don't receive full life at the start of a new stage, and there are no health pickups. I think one of the main drawbacks is that it can be quite difficult to tell where you're being attacked from. These little things in particular blast out a stream of fire which can transcend walls, which I didn't realise for quite some time was actually coming from them. Then there was this part where I randomly kept getting flung off a ledge, which luckily, having recorded the game, I could go back and see exactly what it was, and it's these tiny rocks sucking me down into the pit of no return. It has a very arcadey feel to it, which is by no means a bad thing, but it is missing certain things which usually help to keep arcade games interesting. For one, there are no weapon power-ups in the game. With the exception of these little rockets that you will find now and again, your standard attacks don't ever power up or change. The levels are also a little bit inconsistent. The first level paints itself as being something close to the game Gauntlet, by having enemy respawn points that spit out endless streams of bad guys until they are destroyed, but after this the game mostly abandons the idea for just having standard enemies to shoot. The design is also a bit hit and miss too. Graphically, this is by no means the best the 16-bit era had to offer. Texture patterns are mostly comprised of 2 colours repeating constantly, and there are some environments that just seem a bit barren. Boss battles though are generally good fun with bigger baddies to fight with more animation, but the latter game's standard enemies unfortunately don't share this level of design, and in some cases just look like sprites pulled from different games. The last boss in particular doesn't fit with the design of the game at all, being heavily anime inspired. I do like Granada. It is very pleasing to plan your angle of attack correct and blast through a horde of enemies unscathed, and the levels, whilst inconsistently well designed, are consistently different at least, and it has replayability in how well you will improve on your second run at the level. I just think it lacks a little bit of variety. Different weapons would have made the game massively more interesting, and it isn't something I would usually point out, but I think a 2-player mode would also have been a lot of fun. I did mostly enjoy my time playing it, but it does become difficult in a frustrating way towards the back end. And I'm sure with enough time and practice you would memorise all of the enemy patterns and locations and be able to walk through the game with ease, but it just doesn't marry up very well with the pickable playability of the start of the game. Having said that, I can tell that if I had owned this game when I was younger, that I would most definitely hold it in high regard. Gaming back in the early 90s was a different breed, and a game worthy of multiple playthroughs was something to sought after, so I can understand if it has a positive following. Also, looking back through the footage as I write this review has made me want to play it again, which is always a good sign. It's not a groundbreaking experience by any means, and if I had to place it on a scale, I'd probably put it at the high point of average. The ideal starting point for a superior sequel we sadly never received.